Can I tell you about my second favorite lead up to a video game boss I've played this year? And I do mean the lead up to the boss fight, not the boss itself, not the fight itself. Early on in Expedition 33, you're led down this cave tunnel. There is no longer any background music, there is no dialogue. Your only companion is the sounds of your footsteps. Until a lantern mysteriously thunders to life. And another. And another. There is no obvious power source. Your very presence seems to wake them from their slumber. And as these flowers that can somehow survive without sunlight sway at your feet, and these strange lamps slowly illuminate the passage, you eventually hear... In the distance, an ominous purple lamp hangs unnaturally in the void. You continue your approach, and then... Let's go ahead and stop it right there. I am not going to show you the boss that follows, and I do this because this video isn't about boss fights. It's about this right here. This preamble, this anticipation, this, dare I say, spooky foreplay that doesn't really get talked about enough. We all have video game boss fights that we consider to be masterfully done, and our reasons vary. There is an inferno of conversation around the best soundtrack for a bout: One-Winged Angel, Megalovania, Ludwig the Accursed, Rivers in the Desert. You've probably defended a boss for being too difficult and cited that as exactly why it's so brilliant. You've almost certainly looked at a boss's aesthetic design and been just captivated by how immeasurably cool it is. Or hot. But I've noticed that these are the obvious markers that people point to and talk about. How does it play? How does it look? How does it sound? And that's fine, but what I'd like to do today is not talk about how the steak is seasoned and cooked, but the side of creamy mashed potato casserole billowing with steam, the aroma of roasted carrots with honey herb butter, the candle off to the side to provide ambience. This is about the garnish that goes around that encounter. The lead up to the boss, the subtle details that the game plants in your subconscious that makes that clash meaningful, the use of environment and story and ambiguity to take what was already going to be a blockbuster showdown and turn it into something that has you trembling with anticipation. This is how to give a boss aura. And believe me, I am just as disappointed with myself for titling this video that too, but it's a great word, and it's accurate. I get why it's so overused. You should be safe from any major spoilers in this one. Any late game or final bosses I talk about will be from games at least around a decade old, but even then I plan to keep things relatively vague. Most of these examples are early game, so please, allow me to take you on a ride through my personal syllabus of bosses that I think are adorned perfectly. Pop some popcorn, make yourself comfortable, and while you're doing that, let's hear a word from today's sponsor. If you're a fan of this channel, odds are you like to learn. One of my favorite parts of doing this is reading the comments from people who took something of value from the show. And if you want to learn something of a tremendous value to your career, Boot.Dev is something you really need to know about. If you've ever been interested in coding, even a little bit, this could be your entry point. Because the actual grind of learning to code is tough, but so are the bosses in Silksong, and yet those keep you coming back. Boot.Dev works exactly like this. Lessons are formatted using modern game design to make the difficulty of learning coding and back-end web development extremely engaging. You won't just do lessons, you'll earn XP, levels, achievements, complete quests, and yes, even fight bosses, all while learning to code. If you're looking for a career in this field, that repetition is what you'll actually be doing on the job, so why not learn it that way as well? But don't think you have to tackle it alone. The Boot.Dev Discord community is filled with real people that can help you if you get stuck. There are even solutions available for every challenge on the site and a free demo if you'd like to test it out. So if you want to try your hand at a new career that may mean you get to work from home and potentially make over $100,000 a year based on this Stack Overflow data in the US from 2024, you really should give Boot.Dev a go. And to sweeten the deal even more, you can use my code DarylTalksGames to get 25% off your entire first year of the annual plan. Link in the description, QR code on screen, greatness between your ears. Rise to the challenge, my friend. A huge thanks to Boot.Dev for being such a regular sponsor of the show. Now let's dive into this. Do you remember your very first final boss? For me, it was Lance in Pokemon Crystal. It's a great fight. All the dragon Pokemon make for a truly intimidating opponent. The music is this slow-burning anthem of finality that eventually spirals into pandemonium. Oh, it's so good. But before that, I remember something really special happening when I walked into the room. You see, back before games relied on ambient sound to serve as a junction between important segments, there was a musical soundtrack for every aspect of the world. Caves, fields, oceans, skies, everyone had a tune to fit that area. Crystal was no exception, so when I walked down this final corridor to challenge the champion and the music cut for the first time in hours and hours of gameplay, somehow, that silence was louder than any potential track could be. It was like the game was whispering to me, "This is it." I've seen this approach to boss preludes replicated in so many games over the years. Maybe it's the library music fading out in Tunic as you begin your final ascent to this area's showdown. Maybe it's one of the many bosses in Crosscode that pauses the music while the boss wakes up to build tension before the new music starts. Maybe the game doesn't pause the music, but does pause the visuals, like that stretch before the Enchantress in Shovel Knight, where all the bombastic color goes away as you tiptoe across this dark expanse. You see it in Dondara right before the final boss, you see it in Chrono Trigger right before Magus. In Twilight Princess, you hear those iconic organs on the way up Hyrule Castle, but once you step outside, the music vanishes. And the sky is dark and dreary as the camera dramatically pulls away to set the scene. Keep in mind, in all of these examples, you haven't properly laid eyes on what you'll be fighting yet. This is all about apprehension. How can the game maximize the drama and quicken your pulse? And I think one of the reasons it is so often the case that the game removes audiovisual information right before that encounter to achieve this effect is because it literally gives your mind a chance to catch up. There is something called the Primacy and Recency effects. If you give people a list of words and display them back to back on screen just like this and tell them to memorize as many as they can, people tend to better remember the very first few words and the very last few words. Your long-term memory has a better chance to rehearse and internalize the ones at the beginning of the list, and your short-term memory remembers that last few because they're most fresh on your mind. Without a chance to stop, breathe, and catch up, everything in the middle gets lost. Knowing this, many teachers break up their classes with activities so that instead of one long exhausting lecture, it's several small chunks of information with several chances for primacy and recency to hit and help students remember more. In other words, these classes are paced better. And I think this is one of the reasons less is more when it comes to that walk up before the boss. By giving the player a chance to breathe here, it allows them to process the adventure that has led up to this moment and speculate on what will lie ahead. That is what pacing is, and why boss encounters are so much less effective when you just kind of walk up, see it, and then Now don't get me wrong, stumbling upon a secret enemy or finding yourself in danger when you weren't ready makes for some truly organic gameplay, and it's hilarious finding yourself in these cockamamie situations, but when the point is to make this enemy come across as something larger than life and a genuine force to be reckoned with, there is so much more that can be done to make it a monster in our mind before we ever lock horns with it. And many times, turning out the lights and turning off the radio gets the job done, but sometimes you don't even have to do that. Fury is essentially a boss rush with some truly exhilarating fights, but what I love is that between each one, you slowly walk this landscape and let the tension build. It doesn't just toss you into the next fight, it lays the foundation and paints a picture of the scene first. Maybe you're delivered to a hyper-futuristic prison in the sky with colossal orbiting rings. You might march through a valley sporting every shade of purple on your way to your next opponent. In all of these locations, you don't control the camera, your only action is to step, and it makes for some truly cinematic shots. The game takes these bizarre camera angles that maximize the impossible verticality of each location. Between fights, there truly is no game here. It's all to serve the contemplation of what awaits you. Like an old Western film, Fury takes its time. Doc can't just come in and shoot Johnny Ringo, he has to menacingly walk through the trees and pierce the soul with his eyes. They have to circle one another before drawing and allow the impending death to settle on their shoulders like the morning dew. And I love when developers understand the importance of taking their time like this. When you enter the abyssal woods in Elden Ring, for a change, you won't be greeted with enemies scattered about. Instead, you'll find notes like, "It waits inside," "Turn back while you are yet able," "It cannot be touched." And I won't spoil what these notes are referring to, but oh my goodness, the uninvited goosebumps that danced down my spine when I first arrived here. Again, it's not about the big bad monster itself. It's about what these notes in the ocean of trees spilling into the endless fog above and the lack of any soundtrack telling you how to feel does to the human psyche. The same could be said of Valravan in Hellblade, this bird-like creature that repeatedly taunts you as you descend into his lair, only for you to discover as you turn the corner that he was never there. The same could be said of this strange thing you find in Hollow Knight, which is so bizarre upon finding it that you really don't know how to react. There are moments in Deep Nest where you might catch out of the corner of your eye another bug that looks exactly like you. Do you respond with aggression? Are you disturbed by this? Do you need answers? The game offers none. The knight never speaks. There is no fee or Navi here to give you their 10 cents. It is you and your thoughts. And if your curiosity leads you to follow this other you down deep enough, you'll find yourself another victim in this thing's trap. It mimics bugs in order to lead them to its nest. Such an unsettling yet effective method that reminds you that ultimately, you are nothing but prey in this vast ecosystem. Sequences like these that capitalize on that ambiguity, that uncertainty, that paralyzing sensation that you have stumbled upon something otherworldly are what makes whatever lies beyond the veil truly terrifying. In these examples in particular, I'd argue that the lead up to the boss is actually more important than the boss itself. The boogeyman was never real, and yet as children, we all knew exactly what he was capable of. Because it's the monster we make that's far more terrifying than what's actually under our beds. But what about when games are less ambiguous about what you're going to fight and quite conversely, annoyingly specific? What about when a game dangles that boss in front of you to piss you off or to let fear bubble up? I call these seed bosses because in a ton of different ways, the game plants a seed that this might be something you have to fight down the line. And the thrill of eventually potentially getting your licks in can make for a wonderful fulfilled promise. A real simple example is when you come across something lying dormant only to find that it actually wants to smoke later on. This actually happened to me right as I was in the middle of writing this video. This is super early in Silksong, but well, this is a boss area for sure. Oh god. That thing is gonna want to fight me in a minute. I can guarantee it. What's gonna happen is I'm gonna have to go back here in a minute, and then on the way back it's gonna wake up. That would... what did I f***ing say about this boss? Now that I'm coming back, here he is, he wants to fight. Valravan from earlier kinda does this, Sans kinda does this, Rockhawk, Cynthia, Atom Smasher, Arkveld. Anytime you simply see something threatening and go, I wonder if I'll be fighting that at some point, the devs are ensuring that there is time to marinate on what that encounter might mean for you so that when it finally does happen, it's nice and foreshadowed and rewarding. And to take it a step further, I'm a big fan of when the game doesn't just show you what you'll eventually be up against, but also makes you feel how threatening it is. My mind goes to the Emmys in Metroid Dread, where your first few encounters with each area's model is 100% a cat and mouse game. You simply cannot harm these things. They will end you, and your only choice for now is to run and hide. The same goes for the Hunter in Dead Space. This thing does not die. You can wound it and slow it down, but it will simply regenerate at, I swear to God, an increasingly efficient speed the more you try and hack it down. This thing stalks you from corner to corner of the Ishimura. But in both cases, the game is making you a promise. At some point, the tides will turn, and you'll get that cathartic revenge. Eventually, you'll find an upgrade to beat the Emmy. Eventually, you'll incapacitate the Hunter and watch it burn in an engine's flare. You're done, you son of a bitch! Both of these aren't just examples of interesting gameplay, they're examples of interesting storytelling. It may not be a part of the game's direct narrative, but it's a subplot in your experience in this world. And that narrative obviously matters to you. So naturally, I think we all understand that when we buy into a game's story and want to punch Seymour in the face, that adds a ton of weight to every encounter with him. Without spoiling anything at all for the games you're seeing on screen, if you know you know, sometimes all it takes to give a damn about a boss fight before the boss fight is stakes and emotional investment built by the plot. One example that I will actually explore a bit is Kuze from Yakuza 0, the first real boss fight of the game. Without saying too much, he's a large part of the reason Kiryu, your character, is in deep trouble. So when you finally get to throw hands with him, it's a cathartic cash out. The fight is this bloody, visceral, primal whirlwind of haymakers and elbows. Kuze taunts you, blood flies. But what really makes this work so well is not just the fight itself, but the events afterwards. Kuze's boss shows up to absolutely dress him down and humiliate him for how he fumbled the situation with Kiryu. This culminates in Kuze having to atone for his mistakes by paying in blood in front of all of his Yakuza brethren, and in front of the man who in his mind has cost him immeasurable status in the Tojo clan. This context retroactively adds seasoning to this fight. It's vindicating for Kiryu, it's cathartic for the player, and it further emphasizes what being a Yakuza means to these men. In many ways, this presentation is similar to the Mantis Lords in Hollow Knight. Not only is your encounter with them this hypnotic waltz of dodges and tiny openings that eventually sees you earn their respect, but it's also a chance for the game to then illustrate to you what a big deal that actually was. Because when they permit you entry to Deep Nest and you see the droves of bugs that have been held at bay by the Mantis Lords, you realize that 1, this fight was just a test to make sure you could survive there, and 2, just how powerful these 3 truly are. Seeing this, you swallow another heap of confidence for winning, and it also beautifully teases the horrors that are hidden further in Deep Nest. Both are prime examples of how much value you can squeeze out of a boss even after the battle, instead of just dismissing it for the next big thing. And Yakuza doesn't stop there. Much later in the game, Kiryu is trying to escape from being followed. Practically half of Kamurocho is looking for him, but this woman offers him a shortcut. Why? Because she has no love for the Yakuza. What have they ever done to help her? So she leads him down to the sewers. It's dark, it's quiet, but that's exactly what Kiryu needs right now. Suddenly, it hits you that this was a setup. It's Kuze again. You aren't done with him. And this time, everything about this attack seems desperate. You weren't trying to break into the Dojima headquarters to face him. This time, he recklessly speeds towards you, full throttle through the sewage and the muck, slams into you with a pipe, then bails off his bike as it goes violently careening down the tunnel. This is not a great plan. It could have gotten Kuze killed, but he does not care. What you're staring down is a man that knows he has nothing to lose. Kiryu cost him everything, and this is no longer a fist fight. Deadly intent drags itself toward you. And what I really like about this whole scene is that it kind of borrows from all the stuff we've talked about so far. You get the quiet before the storm in that dark tunnel with no music. You get the relevance to the story. You get the planted seed of thinking Kuze is in the past, and then the surprise of seeing him return as something very different. You even get something that you've seen 1,000 times, but somehow always makes the villain seem all the more badass, and it's just this shot of him not even bothering to look at you. He takes his time getting up. And this is everywhere. Magus in Chrono Trigger is in zero hurry to turn around and look at your party. Sephiroth silently turns his back to you and walks through the flames. In Hades, when you finally fight Hades, what's he doing? Where's he looking? Not at you. Ganondorf monologues for several moments before he finally turns to Link. And then wait, did they just do a dolly zoom? Whoa, what on earth? Did you ever notice that? Also, I love how he's actually playing the organ. Like, this is a diegetic sound. Link hears it too, which is why it gets louder as you climb and even louder when you walk in the room. Ocarina still holds up, man. But this whole the villain takes their sweet time to address you thing, it just works. It gets a little funnier to me every time I find another example of it, but I think there is a reason this little mannerism is so common. Even Gary Oldman, when he was once asked how you can become evil on screen, said that,
not necessarily evil, but if you want to look tough, you bring the head up first, then the eyes.
Oh, it's just, I don't even have anything to write. It's just so cool. And I think the reason it is because all of these aura farming shots you've seen in fiction typically involve an individual being just completely unbothered in the face of hellish danger. It's why the walk away from the explosion is so damn iconic. It's why the boss not even looking at you is so badass. In their eyes, you aren't even worth a glance. You are less than a threat. We've talked about a lot of ways that you can dress up a boss outside of music, outside of the design, outside of the mechanics of the actual fight itself. And to close this out, I have an example that kind of takes everything we've discussed and uses all of it to paint a haunting composition. So, can I tell you about my first favorite lead up to a video game boss I've played this year? One of the games you all voted for in this year's backlog is Bloodborne. And I have to admit, this went from a game that I was genuinely dreading to probably my favorite FromSoft title. Yharnam is this sprawling, nightmarish uncoiling of Victorian architecture dripping body horror and fairy tales gone wrong, and yet there is a bleak beauty to it all that's difficult to articulate. To me, there is no greater example of this than the finale of the Nightmare of Memphis area. There is a definite difficulty spike here, and I'm not a big fan of the Mikolash fight. If you know, you know. No! But those things don't take away from how interesting this place is and how many strange secrets are tucked under the seams. Very early on, the soundtrack begins to play little games with you. One thing you can't help but notice is that sometimes you'll swear you've just heard the cries of a baby. But after you finally make your way to the crux of the castle, the world hushes until you hear there's just this ghostly woman staring at this doorway. She does not attack you. She only sobs and stares. Her moonlit white dress is stained by a steady trickling of blood from her stomach. The whole thing is surreal. It almost seems out of place after the gauntlet to get here, accompanied only by the sounds of your footsteps and her wails. You'll walk to this elevator, ride your way up, and as you exit the elevator, this time it's not faint. You aren't crazy, there is an infant crying. A cradle lies under the moonlight in the ruins of an old nursery. You approach, but then the cries are pacified by this spectral tangle of feathers and cloaks and arms. This is Margot's wet nurse. And the fight itself is quite good. Its use of trickery and darkness and off-speed attacks keep you on your toes the entire time, but once again, it's that symphony of style and flavor that makes this such an incredibly well-done fight. Wet nurses were incredibly common in the Victorian era. If a wealthy family did not want the mother to actually breastfeed, they would hire a wet nurse to do it in her stead. This was done for multitudes of reasons. Perhaps it was for status, as breastfeeding was often thought to affect one's figure, or simply a convenience if breastfeeding was painful for the mother. Perhaps it was health related. What if the mother could not provide sufficient nutrition for the child? What if that child was taken from the mother for their own survival? And there are echoes of this premise not just in the ghost's design, but also in the wet nurses. That frenzy of arms may hold blades here, but I think the implication is that many wet nurses would feed multiple babies, an unhealthy expectation that might have led to one babe in each arm in rotating shifts. Some wet nurses were also paid quite well, especially if they were hired by a wealthy family, and you see this reflected in the forest of dangling jewelry on this thing. This is also likely the most quiet boss you'll fight in the game. There is no thrashing or screaming like you see elsewhere. This thing practically tiptoes around to fight you, almost as if to not wake the baby. Even when you hit it, it sounds like it's actively trying to muffle your weapon. All of this, in addition to the broken nursery chimes of the soundtrack for this fight that you're listening to right now, culminate in one of the most subtly compelling boss fights I have ever seen. And it does all of this through the tiny details, even ones that haunt you after the fight is complete. Once you kill the wet nurse, The health bar doesn't vanish like it typically does. The victory screen misses its cue. It's unsettling. Through video game language, Bloodborne is communicating that you are not safe yet. Then you hear the baby crying again, until its cries gently subside, and you're left with the sounds of it softly sleeping. At this point, the health bar vanishes and the victory screen arrives. You don't feel at peace until the baby does. And in a thoughtful display of closure, should you decide to go back and check on the ghost after this fight, she bows to you in gratitude for freeing her child and moves on. This is a rich vein of gold for people who love dissecting FromSoft lore, but I am not that guy. I am sure someone in the comments could explain who this person is and what exactly is really happening here. In fact, I'd love an explanation if you don't mind. But this was just my simple interpretation of what went down, and it blew me away. Not a single word was uttered, yet before I even saw what this thing looked like, because of everything that led up to this moment, simply the sight of the cradle under the moonlight was enough to have me on the edge of my seat. And that's the point, that games can employ a tapestry of subtleties to make the anticipation just as thrilling as the clash itself. And it's not a lost art by any means, but it's something that's not talked about or appreciated enough. And I'd love to see more developers study this craft and ask themselves this question: how can we have their hearts pounding before they even step through that gate? Hey everyone, thanks so much as always for watching. I hope you had fun with this one. Thanks for allowing me a bit of a break with a shorter video. Don't worry, there will be more long ones despite my lamenting of them last month. I think I just have to pace them out, you know? If you enjoyed this and want to see more videos like it, I do this monthly. Hit that subscribe button and the bell and you'll get notified of when I post. And if you were absolutely floored by this video somehow, maybe consider joining my Patreon page. For $1 a month, you can get access to bonus content like bloopers, editing streams, creative input, and weekly updates. You'll even get your name displayed like you see here. Heck, you might even become a featured patron like one of these lovely people. Valerie Rutherford, Ash K. Kumar Singh, eDog4321, Samuel Contreras, Tanner Bridges, Dan Smith, Jason Hunt, and Charlie Dalton. Thanks again, everyone. Like the video, share it, let me know down below what bosses I should have talked about, and please have yourself a damn good one.
Good boy, what a good little actor. What a good little actor. That was perfect.